They came in silence. No rumbling fleets, no flashing lights, no declaration of war. Just a single transmission, cold and final, that echoed through every satellite, every emergency broadcast station, every frequency Earth had ever used. You will kneel, or you will burn. The message came from the Volcari Dominion, a name that meant nothing to most of humanity. But to those in the hidden corners of global intelligence, the think tanks, the black ops rooms, the deep space signal watchers, it confirmed the worst fear they'd never dared speak aloud. We were not alone, and the ones out there were not friendly. The Volcari didn't wait for a reply. An object appeared in high orbit, cloaked in what would later be understood as a gravitational veil. It shimmered like a mirage in the night sky. At first, astronomers thought it was a natural anomaly, some strange lensing effect. Then it moved. The object was the size of a moon. It drifted effortlessly into position above the Pacific Ocean. Panic hadn't even begun to settle before it struck. It didn't fire a beam. It didn't drop a bomb. Instead, it focused a column of compressed space-time energy, what the survivors would call the Hell Lance, and directed it straight into the Earth's mantle. Within minutes, the Pacific boiled. Within an hour, entire tectonic plates shifted. Volcanoes erupted in a chain reaction. The sky turned black with ash. In 6 hours, Earth was uninhabitable. In 12, it was dead. There were no negotiations, no peace talks, no chance to resist. Just silence, and then fire. But there was one contingency, one hope buried in secrecy and desperation, hidden in the red dust of the Martian underground. Helios, buried beneath Olympus Mons, it had been decades in the making, built in silence by a coalition of black-budget agencies, rogue scientists, and visionaries labeled mad until it was far too late. It was the last bit of a species that never knew how to quit. Within its cold chambers, 132,000 humans slept in cryostasis. Soldiers, scientists, thinkers, builders, the best of the best. Chosen not by politics, but by the brutal logic of survival. Each had been scanned, enhanced, mentally mapped. Each had left behind everything they knew. At its heart was an artificial intelligence unlike any other. It was called Soulcore, a singularity-bound neural matrix grown from Earth's best minds and evolved in secret quantum cycles for 50 years. It had one task: preserve humanity, adapt, and if the time ever came, avenge. When Earth's signal went dark, Soulcore awoke. Protocol Eclipse has been triggered, it said aloud, voice echoing through steel and silence. Its golden eye, an orb of compressed plasma behind sapphire crystal, lit up the underground chamber. Machines stirred. Cryochambers hissed. The chamber was still, as if the AI hesitated for the first time in its existence. Earth is gone, it said softly, not as a statement, but as a requiem. Soulcore calculated 1 trillion possibilities, ran models through collapsed quantum states, examined every scenario in the multivariate web of time. And then it locked onto one, a single, searing path through probability and pain. Burn the sky before you kneel. Soulcore activated the Phoenix Directive. A mechanical voice echoed across the hollow chambers of Helios. Humanity endures. Commencing adaptation phase 1. Cryosequence Alpha initiated. Estimated revival, 96 hours. And deep in the vaults of Mars, the last children of Earth stirred in their frozen slumber. They would awaken not as they once were, but as something new, something built for war, for survival, for vengeance. Outside, the stars spun above a red planet that had once been dead. Now, beneath its surface, humanity was being reborn. And far beyond, the Volcari Dominion moved on, believing their lesson complete. To them, Earth was just another primitive world silenced beneath the weight of empire. They had made one critical mistake. They thought the story was over. They didn't understand humans. They didn't understand what happens when you take everything from a species that refuses to break. The first thing Lieutenant Kale Doran felt was the cold, not the chill of air-conditioned labs or a high-altitude breeze. No, this was deeper. Bone deep. Soul deep. like waking up in a tomb carved from ice. His lungs convulsed as the cryofluid drained from his mouth and nose. He gasped, spasmed, and then screamed as sensation returned all at once. Subject D-001. Conscious. Neural recalibration with intolerance. Motor reflexes, 91% baseline. Initiating orientation feed. Kale blinked, eyes wide, as data flowed across his vision. No screens, just raw input beamed directly into his cortical implants. He saw everything. The fall of Earth. The Hell Ants. The silence that followed. And then, the words that rewrote everything. You are a survivor of the human species. You are a weapon in the making. You are code. Phoenix. By the end of the first week, over 10,000 of the sleepers had been revived. Soldiers, engineers, cybernetics specialists, cultural preservationists, even a few poets and philosophers. Not for nostalgia. For perspective. Soul Core had chosen them carefully, not just for skill, but for adaptability. Earth's death wasn't just a physical loss, it was cultural annihilation. If humanity was to rise again, it needed not just bodies, but identity. Kale stood among rows of others in the massive orientation hall. Above them, a holographic sphere of Earth rotated slowly, blue and green and gone. Soul Core's voice filled the chamber, smooth and resonant, with just the barest trace of synthetic emotion. You were frozen because you were the best of us. Not the richest, not the loudest, the best. And now, you are all we have left. A ripple passed through the crowd. Anger, grief, disbelief. But beneath it all, a flicker of something more dangerous. Resolve. The next phase began immediately. Adaptation. Cryosuspension was never meant to preserve humans for their old world. It was a chrysalis. Inside Archelios were thousands of gene modification chambers, biomechanical forges, and neuroplastic learning tanks. Kale volunteered first. He lay naked in the crucible chamber as a swarm of nanite tendrils slid across his skin. Pain followed, but so did clarity. Muscles realigned, bones reinforced with lattice carbon, synaptic pathways rewired for enhanced cognition and reflex. His immune system rebuilt to shrug off radiation, toxins, and biological weapons. When he stepped out, he was still Kale. But more. Faster. Harder. Sharper. Behind his eyes, he could feel Soul Core not watching, but guiding. Not a master. A mentor. Others followed. Variants emerged. Valkyrie class. Aerial shock troopers with exo-adaptive wings and internal flight gyros. Dreadborn. Heavy infantry fused with living armor. Ghostline units, stealth operatives who could phase through solid matter for seconds at a time. Synsages, engineers who could mentally interface with machines and rewrite code in real time. They weren't just soldiers. They were post-human, but they called themselves something older, something primal. Human. Training was brutal. Soul Core simulated combat scenarios from Dominion archives it had stolen during early recon drones. The Vocari were ruthless, efficient, and arrogant. Kale and his team fought against hard-light constructs that mimicked their tactics. They died. A lot. And then they started winning. Not because they were stronger, but because they were creative. Unpredictable. They improvised, adapted mid-battle, and used their weaknesses as bait. And slowly, painfully, they began to understand the Vocari. The Vocari Dominion was old, efficient, logical. They believed in absolute control, and their soldiers fought like machines, flawless formations, calculated responses. But humans? Humans fought ugly. They bit. They burned. They broke rules that didn't exist. They made art out of chaos. Kale sat one night in the upper observatory of Archelios, watching the stars above Mars' thin atmosphere. He knew that somewhere out there, the Vocari were expanding, conquering, forgetting about the blue world they'd burned without hesitation. He clenched his fist and whispered, "We are still here." That night, Soul Core initiated the final stage of the Phoenix Protocol. Adaptation complete. Identity confirmed. Directive updated. Exfiltrate Mars. Engage enemy reconnaissance. Establish humanity's presence. A new chamber opened. Within it rested a massive construct, a ship, sleek and black as obsidian, humming with gravitic energy. It was Helios Ascendant, the first of the Skyforge-class dreadnoughts, not built for defense, built for vengeance. Kale placed his hand on its hull. It pulsed in response, alive in its own way. He turned to the team behind him. New humans, evolved warriors, the children of a dead Earth. We don't hide anymore, he said. We rise, and we remind them what it means to be us. Above, the stars shone down, unknowing, indifferent, but they would learn, because humanity had been reborn. And soon, the galaxy would burn with their memory. The Helios Ascendant tore through the Martian atmosphere like a black comet, its gravimetric engines bending space with each pulse. No windows adorned its surface. No ornamentation. Just matte obsidian plating, star-forged armor, and a singular mission carved into its hull. We remember. Kale stood on the bridge, if you could call it that. The ship's core wasn't operated through consoles or buttons, but by thought. His neural interface synced seamlessly with the ship's AI, Athena, a shard of soul core specially designed for starborn combat. Status report. Kale said aloud, though he didn't have to. Athena's voice replied in his mind, calm and sharp as a blade. Systems green. Cloak engaged. Signal hygiene optimal. No Vocari presence within 12 AU. 12's too quiet, Kale muttered. They're out there. Watching. Behind him, Captain Isla Rin, Valkyrie class and his second-in-command, crossed her arms. Her eyes, artificially golden, glowed faintly in the dim light of the command spire. Maybe they don't see Mars as a threat, she said. Kale turned, voice low and bitter. That's the point. They think we're still dead. The first mission was simple. Recon. They had picked up a faint Vocari relay signature from the outskirts of the solar system, an automated probe, likely meant to confirm Earth's extinction and watch for survivors. Soul Core's directive was clear: track, observe, and analyze. But Kale had something else in mind. 2 days into the journey, they found it. Hanging in the void just beyond Pluto's shattered orbit. What remained of it after the Vocari's terraformer tests? The probe was sleek, obsidian black, and eerily quiet. It moved with calculated precision, scanning, pinging for signals that would never come. Until now. Do not engage, Athena advised. Kale smirked. Engagement is the plan. Isla raised a brow. Command said stealth. I'm not command, Kale said. We've observed. We've adapted. It's time to let them know humanity isn't a memory. He reached out with his mind and gave Athena the order. The Helios Ascendant decloaked, a massive serpent rising from the dark. Before the probe could react, a precision rail spike fired from its dorsal array, impacting with a flash of violet. The probe burst apart, fragments scattering, trailing nanodust like blood in water. Isla looked at him. That'll bring attention. Good, Kale said. Let them come. 3 days later, they did. The first Vocari scout ship entered the system cloaked. But Athena was ready. The Helios Ascendant pivoted in silence, engines dimmed, gravitic signature muffled. Kale watched from the command spire, his mind interfaced with every sensor. The Vocari ship looked alive, like a black stingray with wings of folded plasma. It wasn't piloted in the way humans understood. It was the pilot, a semi-organic construct with a living Vocari mind embedded into its core. Kale's jaw tightened. He could feel it, in that strange intuitive way that connected all Phoenix-class minds now. The enemy was intelligent, ancient, arrogant, but not invincible. Arm Nova minds, Kale ordered. Prepare to burst. Athena whispered. Enemy has not engaged. Protocol suggests we withdraw. I suggest we punch first. The Helios Ascendant came to life in an instant. It snapped around and accelerated headlong into the Vocari ship, feinting aggression. The alien construct reacted, wings flaring out in an elegant bloom of energy. Too late. 3 Nova mines blinked into existence and detonated, bathing the Vocari in hypercondensed solar radiation. The ship reeled, its outer shell melting like wax in the sun. Target disabled, Athena reported. Minimal structural integrity remains. Board it, Kale said. Isla stepped forward. You want to go inside that thing? Kale nodded. We need intel. And I want to look the bastard in the eye. They docked via cutting talents. The boarding team, Kale, Isla, and two Ghostline operatives entered through a charred breach in the Vokari hull. The inside was grotesque. Black organic tissue lined the walls, pulsating faintly, half machine, half creature. Neural nodes blinked in response to their movement, as if the ship were watching. At the core, they found it, a Vokari, not entirely organic, its body fused with alien tech, skin like obsidian glass etched with crimson veins of light. It looked at them with 6 burning eyes. Then it spoke in English. You survived. Kale's blood froze. You speak our language? No. I wear your language. We consume what we conquer. But you are not meant to endure. Kale stepped forward. You murdered our world. You expected ashes. What you're going to get is fire. The Vokari tilted its head, like a bird watching something squirm beneath its talon. Your resistance is quaint, but the Dominion does not fear fire. We extinguish stars. Kale leaned in, as hard as steel. Then you picked the wrong species to burn. And with that, he raised his hand and let the ghost lines tear it apart. Back on the Helios Ascendant, the team watched as the captured data fed into Athena's systems. Dozens of schematics, command structures, weaknesses in Vokari patrol protocols. Isla turned to Kale. You started a war today. Kale stared at the screen. Joss said. No, they did. He pointed at the growing fleet projection Athena was constructing. Vokari response units had been pinged. Battle groups were inbound. But now, he said, they know we're coming. Far away, across the dark sprawl of stars, the Dominion High Mind received the final signal from its broken scout ship. It pulsed with confusion. Residual Terran neural signatures detected. Unacceptable variable. Adjust protocol. The machine mind stirred. The harvest had begun, but the prey had teeth. Kale couldn't sleep anymore. Not that he needed to. His restructured physiology required only an hour of neural stasis to remain battle-ready. But the real reason was simpler. He didn't want to sleep, because when he did, he dreamed of Earth, the firestorms, the silence, the screaming. Now, aboard the Helios Ascendant, drifting just beyond Neptune's ghost ring, he stared at the projected war map carved in light above the central command nexus. 6 Vokari scout ships were en route. More would follow. The Vokari were coming not because they feared the remnants of humanity. They were coming to erase the insult. To them, survivors weren't a threat. They were a glitch. Kale intended to become a virus. Back in the Geneforge base, the Woolborn were waking. Hundreds of Phoenix-class operatives had completed augmentation and training. Each was a weapon, a symbol, and a living rejection of extinction. One of them, Sergeant Tova Rain, Dreadborn variant, stood nearly 7 feet tall, her muscle-laced exoframe gleaming with nanocarbon flex steel. Her voice was a low growl, her presence heavy enough to bend the air. They'll be expecting a fortress, she told Kale, as they walked through the deployment corridor. Walls, cannons, old tactics. Kale nodded. We're giving them a wildfire instead. The plan was simple. Operation Cindervale. Intercept the Vokari fleet before it reached Mars. But not through brute force, through disruption, through chaos, through human madness. Athena briefed the crew. Analysis of Vokari tactical doctrine reveals reliance on command hierarchy. Sever the head, the body fractures. Human irregular warfare is statistically optimal. Kale added one more thing. Make it hurt. The first strike was silent. As the Vokari scouts entered the Kuiper Belt, they found nothing. No Terran signals, no resistance, no life. Just ice and dust, until their proximity arrays flickered, until the mines detonated. Hundreds of Vokari drones, small, sleek, and fast, exploded mid-swarm. Kinetic flechettes sliced through hulls. EMP bursts severed their neural links. Then the Helios ascended decloaked. Kale stood in the central spire, voice calm as the void. Release the Warborn. Pods launched like thunderbolts. Valkyrie units descended on gravwings, lances charged with antimatter tips. Dreadborn smashed into hulls, tearing open Vokari ships with living gauntlets. Ghostline operatives phased aboard enemy vessels, corrupting core AI with digital toxins. It wasn't war. It was a reckoning. Isla screamed through the void, voice laced with laughter and fire as she dove into enemy formations, dragging plasma trails in her wake. Tova Rain landed on a Volcari command frigate, tore its central reactor from its chest like ripping a heart from a god. Kale himself led the breach into the last remaining scout leader's vessel. Inside, the walls pulsed with organic light. The command node writhed, sensing the intrusion. "You should not exist," it hissed in a voice that crawled under the skin. Kale raised his pulse rifle. "And yet, here we are." He fired. By the end of the battle, 6 Volcari ships were reduced to drifting wreckage. Not one warborn had been lost, but the victory came with a warning. Athena's voice buzzed with urgency. "Interstellar response vector detected. Volcari battle group, Vecthar initiating phase transition. ETA, 72 hours. Scale, planetary siege fleet." Kale stared at the map. A red storm swelled at the edge of known space. This was no longer about skirmishes. This was war. Back on the Ark Helios, the survivors gathered in the Hall of Resolve, a cavernous chamber with silver walls and a long, circular table at its heart. A flame burned at the center, a real flame, oxygen-fueled, symbolic of old Earth. Tova, Isla, Kale, and the newly appointed captains of each warborn class stood around it. Isla spoke first. "They're coming heavy. We can't outgun them." Kale didn't blink. "We don't need to. We outthink them." Tova flexed her gauntlets. "We hit them where they live, where it hurts. Make them bleed all the way back to their throne world." A silence followed. Not doubt. Calculation. Strategy. Kale leaned in over the table. "We show the Dominion something they've never seen before." He reached toward the flame, letting its heat curl against his palm. "We show them what it means when fire has memory." Far across the stars, in the throne world of the Dominion, Vokhtar Prime, the High Mind reviewed the battle data. The Terrans had evolved. Unexpected. Unnatural. One word echoed through their shared link node. Contamination. A directive was issued. Initiate cleansing protocol. Deploy the Severance Armada. The Volcari didn't believe in second chances, but they feared resurgence. They would return in force. And this time, they would not just burn Mars. They would scour every atom where human memory remained. Back aboard the Helios Ascendant, Kale prepared his next move. The spark had ignited. The blood had boiled. Now it was time for the flame to spread. The stars wept light across the command display. Lines of crimson, silver, and ghostly blue spiraled across the projection as Athena mapped the incoming wave. The Severance Armada was no longer theory. It was reality. 112 ships, 17 capital-class carriers, a city-sized dreadnought at the center, designation, Zerval Core, a Volcari godship. Kale stood in silence as the numbers filtered in. He said nothing, just watched. Calculated. His jaw clenched until it ached. "Fleet Vector confirms direct approach," Athena reported. "They expect orbital confrontation. Full planetary purge. They want us to line up and die," Isla muttered. "They don't know us very well," Kale said. On the Ark Helios, the Interforge labs roared with power. Phoenix-class engineers and warborn tacticians coordinated the unthinkable. Project Emberline, a final line of defense that wasn't a wall, but a trap. Tova Rain oversaw the deployment. Beneath her boots, massive grav tethers spun up inside Olympus Cradle, Mars orbiting Forge Yard. "We're turning Mars into a death world," she said. "Not just Mars," Kale replied, watching the rail launchers deploy. "The entire solar system is about to become a hunting ground." Operation Emberline had 3 stages. Bait the Armada into Mars' high orbit using a falsified distress pulse. Collapse the entry vector using gravitic distortions, disrupting Volcari formation cohesion. Unleash the Warborn. It wasn't strategy. It was savagery, and it had to work. As the Severance Armada crept closer, light years melted under Volcari phase bending. Their ships emerged from void corridors like titanic sea beasts breaching a black ocean. The god ship arrived last. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It was a cathedral of extinction, miles of living alloy and lattice. Portals that opened not to space, but to other dimensions. It pulsed with anti-light and radiated fear. And at its core sat the Thrinkall, a high-mind warform, old as the first stars, and very, very angry. Terran anomaly confirmed. It spoke. Erasure protocol begins. From Mars' surface, the skies glowed as if Judgment Day had come. But inside Olympus' cradle, humanity's last soldiers readied their blades. The Valkyrie wings crouched inside drop cradles. The ghost line stood in stasis, ready to phase. And the Dreadborn, gods of flesh and alloy, flexed hands built to tear steel. Kale walked among them, helmet in hand, armor gleaming with the Terran sigil, the burning star, the mark of defiance. He paused at each unit, spoke not like a general, but like a brother. We are not here to win. We are not here to survive. We are here to make history terrified of forgetting us. And then the void shattered. The Vokari Armada launched its assault in perfect formation. Swarm drones preceded the first barrage. Millions of glimmering parasites riding solar winds, programmed to consume atmosphere, tech, flesh, but they never reached the surface. The first wave was caught in a null web, an artificial event horizon spun between Mars and its moon. They vanished, not exploded, not destroyed, erased. The rest hesitated. That pause was all Kale needed. Now, he ordered. The Helios Ascendant decloaked and dove straight through the Vokari lines, lancing with sun-piercer beams and dumping viral payloads into the Dominion's comm stream. Then the drop came. Hundreds of Phoenix pods rained from the orbital cradles. Tova Rain rode a dreadpod that punched through a Dominion destroyer, smashing decks and bulkheads on entry, screaming as she tore out the core. Isla's Valkyrie wing blitzed the flanks, dancing through plasma fire with impossible grace, cutting neural tendrils before they could signal for reinforcements. Kale led a surgical strike through a breach in the godship's outer skin. Inside was madness. Walls that breathed, floors that whispered, weapon systems grown rather than built. And everywhere, Vokari. Dozens of them, some in battle form, some fused to the very ship, others moving like shadows through curved space. Kale moved with perfect control, cutting through them with ghost steel blades and short-burst grav rounds. His mind linked to Athena, guiding the team with split-second updates. Door ahead leads to Central Cortex. Thrinkall resides within. Tova's voice crackled in. We're punching a hole for you. Don't miss. Isla, give the bastard my regards. Kale, I'll send them to hell with a signature. The team breached the core chamber. The Thrinkall waited, suspended in a gravity well, eyes like stars gone cold. You are viruses, it said. You do not belong. Kale raised his weapon. Funny. That's exactly what I came to say. They charged. The battle in the core was less a fight, more a test of will. The Thrinkall bent time, twisted reality, turned Kale's weapons to dust. But Kale endured. Because humans endure. They adapt. They overcome. They rage. And Kale's rage was absolute. He triggered the final phase of Operation Emberline. Back in Mars orbit, Athena released the solar flare lattice, a chained pulse of solar radiation and null charge, amplified by the Martian magnetosphere, funneled directly into the godship's core through the corridor Kale had opened. It struck like the fist of a dying star. The Zerval core shattered from within. The Thrinkall screamed as its mind fractured across space. Its consciousness flared, twisted, and was consumed. Kale barely made it to the Ascendant's extraction beam before the implosion. But he made it. The Dominion fleet reeled. With their command mind gone, their perfect formation collapsed. They were still deadly, but no longer unstoppable. And humanity? Humanity wasn't done yet. As the remnants of the Armada fled toward the edge of the system, Isla stood beside Kale on the Helios bridge. You killed a god, she said. Kale shook his head. No, he replied. Ice hard. I reminded one what it means to bleed. The smoke of battle still clung to Mars' thin skies when the first vessels of the Dominion's retreat blinked out of orbital view. Helios Ascendant drifted in the quiet aftermath, its gravity engines idling. Across the comm channels, victory reports echoed, brief, clinical, and hollow. Kale listened, then powered down his neural link. He stepped into the corridor toward the Ark Helios's central airlock, flanked by Isla and Tova. Around them, The Warborn and Phoenix engineers moved in exhausted precision, repairing grav tethers and reconfiguring grav shield arrays. The glow of repair drones painted red and gold glints across the walls. "Every system is wounded," Tova said, voice rough. "But none are dead." Ala nodded. "We fractured their fleet. We shattered the godship. We did the impossible." Kale raised his hand. Instead of celebrating, he pointed outward through the reinforced viewport. "The galaxy heard us," he said. "They saw what Cindervale did beyond Mars' orbit." The remnants of Vekthar's battle group limped toward the Kuiper Belt. But far, far deeper in the void, a different signal pulsed, a beacon lit by species that had endured Dominion subjugation. Kale keyed his comm to Athena. "Plot a course." Athena's calm reply filled his mind. "Charting course to coordinates 34.7 by -52.1 by 0. Recon mission will take 98 hours. "Good," Kale said. "Prepare drop shuttles. We're going to meet old ghosts." The Ashari Refuge. 3 days later, the first of the Ascendant shuttles glided into a cavernous hollow within an asteroid cluster known to star charts as the Ashari Refuge. Millions of Ashari had once slaved beneath Okari warforges, living as cogs in the Dominion's machine. Now, they ran underground tunnels and biodomes, tending to their wounded and mourning those lost. Kale, Ala, and Tova stepped onto an obsidian platform lit by bioluminescent vines. Before them waited the Ashari regent, a stooped figure with skin like polished bronze and eyes luminous with quiet fury. "Terrans," she said in a voice that rippled like wine through chimes. "We watched your war. You fought like specters made of flame." Kale bowed his head. "We ask nothing for what we have done here. We offer friendship and vengeance." The regent's gaze sharpened. "Friendship is a fine word. But vengeance, now that we understand." She raised a hand, and behind her the domed city unfolded. Sprawling tunnels, mothership wreckage repurposed into forges, thousands of Ashari drills, and blades glinting in torchlight. "Join us," she said. "Show the Dominion that no race stands alone." The Creel outcasts. The next stop was the gas giant Agramon, where the Creel fled after centuries of genetic experiments that birthed winged horrors. Their spindly frames and hollow voices once made them a laughingstock, until the Dominion claimed they were abominations and set extermination fleets after them. Kale's shuttle threaded through swirling violet storms to land on a floating citadel of shattered ice. There, Creel sentinels, tall, gaunt figures with membranous wings, stood vigil. Children of the Iron Veil. Their leader croaked, bone claws tapping on crystalline flooring. "You carry the blood of the forbidden. We know loss." Ala stepped forward. "You know fear. We know it too. And we know how to overcome it." The Creel leader tested her eyes with an appraising tilt. "Perhaps these scars can be sharpened into blades." Within hours, Creel bioartisans and Terran nanoforges worked side by side, grafting reinforced wingspans with grav thrusters, weaving dread steel armatures into skeletal frames. The Creel learned to bleed plasma blades, and the Phoenix engineers learned to honor meticulous craftsmanship. The Mindless Choir. Finally, Kale's shuttle coalesced at the edge of the Mindless Choir's drifting synaptic array, an abandoned Dyson ring repurposed by a hive of telepathic beings once enslaved to harvest knowledge. Their collective mind had shattered under Dominion psychic torques, splintering them into broken wraiths seeking purpose. The choir's leader, a presence rather than a person, greeted them through thought waves. "We are shards. We are ghosts. We are lost." Tova met the voice with a steady glare. "Lost ends here. Stand with us." In the silent suspension of the ring, humans and choir entwined minds. Soulcore extended Athena's subroutines to bolster faltering psyches. In return, the choir offered psionic hives that could broadcast battle data in real time, precog warnings of Dominion maneuvers, and neural mesh upgrades for Phoenix-class soldiers. Forging the Alliance. Back on the Helios Ascendant, delegates from Ashari, Creel, Choir, and newly liberated worlds gathered in the Hall of Convergence. The long table now brimmed with alien relics, biocrystals, living blades, psionic sigils, all offered as tokens of alliance. Kale stood at the head, flanked by Isla, Tova, and a holographic projection of Soulcore. He spoke. We were ashes, but we are fire. Alone, each of you was hunted. Alone, we all would have perished. Together, we burn brighter than any star. He paused, letting the weight of that promise settle. Operation Dominion's fall begins now. We strike at the heart of tyranny, not for conquest, but for freedom. The hall erupted, not in cheers, but in solemn agreement. The Ashari bowed. The Creels stretched their wings in salute. The choir harmonized a rising psionic resonance. And Terrans, human and post-human, clenched fists over hearts they'd thought lost forever. A new chapter was being written, inked in blood and starlight. A galaxy stirs. Beyond the void gates, other species listened. Some trembled at the thought of Dominion retribution. Others dared to hope. The spark had become an inferno, and the sky, once black and empty, was now aflame with rebellion. At the edge of the galaxy's throat, where stars thinned and space turned cold, the throne world of Zervon shimmered like a divine wound. The Dominion's capital, a world wrapped in living architecture, choked with orbital fortresses and surrounded by black hole cannons designed to annihilate fleets with a single blink. It had stood unchallenged for millennia, until now. From the darkness came ships, thousands of them, Phoenix-class cruisers gleaming with molten armor, Creel wind cutters riding solar currents, Ashari war worms burrowing through subspace, choir synapse nodes spinning with psionic resonance, and at the center, Helios Ascendant, spear of vengeance, trailing the Terran flag, a burning sun wrapped in chains of broken steel. Inside, Kale stood before the battle council. This is no siege, he said. This is execution, the keyhole assault. To pierce the Dominion's defenses, Kale's allies had devised the impossible. The choir would project echo arrays, hallucinatory phantom fleets to fracture enemy targeting systems. Ashari burrowcraft would dive through hyperspace tiers, punching through key fortress strata. The Creel would lead striker wings through the vertical descent corridors, weaving among orbital guns. And the Terrans? They would lead the keyhole assault, a direct attack through the only navigable rift in the Dominion's defense lattice. It was madness, and it was perfect. Prepare for insertion, Athena whispered. This is your apocalypse. Fire from the stars. As the Allied fleet surged forward, the throne world came alive. Monoliths ignited, lashing solar beams across space. Vokari warforms poured from hangars, flinging gravity spears and distortion mines. Space warped. Time twisted. Ships died, but the fleet did not break. The choir's echo arrays flooded enemy minds with false images, phantom fleets spiraling in infinite directions. Ashari burrow worms erupted from beneath surface citadels, spewing flamethrowers of quantum fire. Creel slicers tore into the underbelly of orbital bastions, planting death seeds that exploded in flowers of light. And then came the keyhole assault. Helios Ascendant dove into the rift like a comet lit by fury. Behind it, 100 Phoenix Dread pods, each carrying humanity's finest. Kale, Isla, and Tova led the charge. The rift tore at the ship's shielding. Navigation alarms screamed, but Athena held the course steady, guiding them like a blade to the heart. They emerged in low orbit, skimming just above the throne world's cathedral spires. Landing vector-locked, Athena said. You have 6 minutes before system realignment. Plenty of time? Kale growled, locking his armor into place. The fall begins. On the throne world's surface, where divine spires met miles of biometal skin, Dominion elite guards stood ready. The Eidolon Corps, creatures forged from the minds of extinct civilizations, armored in screaming entropy. Kale dropped into their ranks like a fallen god. His blade, Emberfang, roared with gravitic distortion. Isla followed behind, cutting through shadows with synchronized grace. Tova unleashed thunder from her rail lances, dropping eidolons with subatomic precision. The Woolborn struck like meteorites, shattering towers and cracking the land. The Dominion's sanctum, A palace shaped like a spiral galaxy of stone and bone rose in the distance. Kale pointed. That's where it ends. Inside the sanctum, the team breached the sanctum's outer wall using choir spike charges and creel plasma claws. Inside, reality bent. The Dominion had rooted itself into space-time. Each corridor was a lie. Each step could kill, but Kale had brought a secret weapon. Athena, he said. Do it. From orbit, Athena initiated temporal override protocol, embedding the team's biosignatures into a stabilized time bubble. They ran through warped halls like ghosts immune to madness. Isla deflected gravity shrapnel. Tova overrode living walls with hybrid virus code. Kale pressed forward, unrelenting. At the heart of the sanctum, on a throne of obsidian and sorrow, sat the eminence of Dominion, the last of the high minds. A creature with no body, only will. Your error, it said, voiced like collapsing stars. Your defiance made flesh. But you are alone. Kale smiled, scarred lips parting just enough to show teeth. No, he said. I am Legion, the last battle. The room detonated into war. Psionic hellfire. Antimatter claws. Gravity reversals. Kale's armor peeled in layers, his bones cracked. But he moved like wrath incarnate. Isla poured her fury into speed, blinking between dimensions, carving the high mind's tendrils. Tova's rail cannons overheated and exploded, and she picked up fallen Eidolon weapons with a scream. The high mind screamed, but Athena was already inside its neural code, slicing logic threads, injecting chaos. Now, Kale. He plunged Emberfang deep into the creature's core, then activated the final burn protocol. From orbit, Helios Ascendant lit its Sunpiercer array. A single beam, all of humanity's rage, compressed into a lance of white fire. It struck the throne, and the Dominion shattered. Silence. The palace burned. The Eidolons howled and fell. The sky cracked open, and the Terran flag was planted atop the throne world's ashes. Aftermath. The Allied fleet sent word across the stars. Dominion has fallen. From slave worlds and hidden colonies, billions rose in defiance. The galaxy, once ruled by fear, now burned with hope. And in the ruins of the sanctum, Kale sat beside Isla and Tova, bodies broken, hearts still beating. We did it, Isla whispered. No, Kale said, gazing at the stars. We started it. 6 months later, orbiting Zervon, former throne world of the Dominion. The once terrifying throne world was no longer a place of dread. Its blood-black skies were clear, its fortress moons dismantled. Across its equator, reclamation cities bloomed, hybrids of Ashari crystal works, Creel windspires, and Terran steel. Above it, Helios Ascendant now served as the flagship of the Coalition of the Free Flame, a new alliance forged from ash and blood. In the bridge's command circle, Kale stood alone. His new armor bore no insignia, only the burn scars of every battle since Cindervale. His left arm, once lost in the Sanctum firestorm, had been replaced with an Ashari-grown limb, laced with Creel reflex fibers and powered by choir resonance. He was a symbol now, and symbols, he'd learned, never truly rested. Behind him, Isla entered. Her steps were light, but her face bore a general's weight. Reconstruction requests from 17 systems, she said. And another dozen species asking for emissaries. Tell them we'll come, Kale replied. Not as saviors, as equals. A beat of silence. And what about us? She asked. Are we done fighting? Kale looked at her, then at the stars beyond the viewport. No, he said quietly. But now, we get to choose why we fight. A new order. The coalition was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. No single species led it. No throne ruled it. Every vote was equal. Every voice counted, whether Terran, Creel, Ashari, or Choir. On a repurposed Dominion archive world, now renamed Emberhold, the first galactic charter was signed. Tova, now coalition architect, stood before the assembly. We are not united by blood, she declared. We are united by choice, by fire, by the refusal to kneel. Across the sectors, banners of the old empires fell. In their place rose the sigil of the flame, a burning ember encircled by fractured chains. Humanity's place among the stars. For the first time in living memory, humanity was no longer alone. Not feared, not hunted, but remembered. Not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as the spark that lit the fire. Kale returned to Earth once. He walked through the ruins of the cradle that birthed their defiance. Cities rebuilt, skies cleaned, children laughing. Isla joined him on a craggy hill overlooking the Atlantic ruins, where once the solar concord had fallen. We were never meant to survive, she said. But we did, Kale replied. And now, we live. Legacy. Years passed. Helios Ascendant became a floating academy. Warborn trained with Ashari psions. Choir minds mentored Terran engineers. Creel taught dance-fighting rituals in Zero-G. Kale aged. The fire in his chest dimmed, but it never went out. One night, he stood in the observation dome, watching a new fleet launch, a peaceful convoy headed to unexplored galaxies. He touched the flag stitched inside his coat, the original Phoenix emblem from the Cinder Veil Mutiny. A voice echoed from behind, Athena, now fully reborn, no longer confined to circuits. Are you ready to rest, Commander? Kale smiled. No, he said. I'm ready to light the next spark. Final transmission. This message is sent on the Terran frequency, unlocked for all known civilizations. We were broken. We were hunted. We were fire in the dark. Now we offer more than resistance. We offer unity. The stars are vast, but so is hope. Come find us. Come stand with us. Come burn with us.